The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondell.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondell. Tonight, our guest is a multi-talented actress and producer who's been seen in Counterplay on the 9 Network in Australia, as well as on Amazon Prime. She was also host on AfterBuzz TV here in the States. She's also completed 3 films since 2020 and has been named one of Australia's ones to watch. And we're so happy to have her, this talented artist, with us tonight. So welcome to the show, Mikaela Phillips. Thanks for being with us, Mikaela.
Hey, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time tonight. And, just looking at your work, I know you do a lot of projects with your writer-director mom, Chris Phillips. And, it's got to be a treat to kind of be able to work with your mom. So talk about that, that relationship that you guys have, because, it's, you see it in Hollywood sometimes where parents and children will work together, but it seems like you guys are just like kind of rolling on all cylinders here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we definitely are forging and trailblazing a path for sure. Not only as a mother and daughter, which is quite unique, but as women, in the industry as females. So, what can I say? It's definitely a great working dynamic. We've been doing so for a while now, so we have that rhythm down, and we're close, not just work wise. So I think that really helps and plays a big role in knowing who's going to pick up the slack where and whose strengths and weaknesses are where. And that's what makes us such a formidable little duo.
How do you work around some of the, obviously it's a creative art. So how do you work around any kind of maybe disagreements or things that you come upon with a project, and how do you work around that? Do you just kind of put that at the door when you go into a project and just talk it through, or how do you do that?
That's a great question. It's funny. A lot of people always say, I don't know how you could work with your mom or work with a parent. I wouldn't be able to do it. And, that's not to say we definitely do sometimes have some creative disagreements. And when I say disagreements, it's more so probably our visions go in a different direction more than anything, whether that may be who may be the best fit for a role, or whether that's the direction a storyline should go. But we generally just talk it out. I always will definitely try and make such a play for what I want, and definitely try and sell, my opinion as hard as possible. But, we have to put the production or whatever that we're working on ahead of that. And in front of that. So that's really what takes the priority. And it's just a lot of discussion, a lot of laugh, and maybe a little more bickering on my side than hers. But that's pretty much what it comes down to. And sometimes you do have an outside influence if you're working with other individuals who can give you a bit of a third party opinion, which also helps, because you're looking at it with different fresh eyes and a perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And, talking about, being 2 women in the industry and at the levels that you are, production, executive producers, writers, directors, we talk about this on our show quite often because, I feel obviously there's still a long way to go to have, women in these roles in our industry. And you, like I said, you guys are really forging a path here. So, what is your thoughts on that? Do you think that, that we're getting better at having a women in these roles, or do you think that we're still too far behind in that?
That's a tough one to answer, because definitely there has been a lot of progress made for sure. We've definitely seen more female representation come up in the last several years that wasn't there. But there's definitely still a long way that can go, and still a long way to see that prosper. It's also funny because being a younger female in the industry, I definitely have a lot of people who are always receptive to me, which I am fortunate for, and I definitely respect and admire that when people give me that time, because people don't have to, as you can imagine, in this industry. But what's interesting is to see that sometimes Chris, like mom, won't necessarily get that from some individuals. And I don't know if that's just because obviously different men, a different age group, have maybe a different mindset. But it's constantly it is still evident that there is some sexism sometimes, and that you do have to definitely push a lot harder as a female, where there are some opportunities potentially that kind of fall through the cracks a bit more. So more representation and more opportunities for women I would love to see, and we definitely advocate for that as well. within our productions.
Talk about, I know you split your time between LA and Australia, and talk about the difference between production or producing something there versus in the States here. Do you find a difference in that, working here versus there? I mean, because I know you've seen it both a lot. So do you see a difference?
There is a bit of a difference for sure. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of us Aussies definitely leave, to put it quite nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But there definitely is a difference. I do, primarily am here in Los Angeles. This is home. This is where I live. But, going back, say, during 2020, obviously it was the pandemic. There was no work and it shut down here. So Australia at that point was thriving, which did give the opportunity to go back and work on, several films over the course of nearly 1.5 years, which is very busy, as you can imagine. So in terms of production, there's definitely a lot that Australia has to offer, and there's a lot that you can do out there. Absolutely. But I would say that I think production is a little more evolved, a little more faster paced, and probably a little more giving, in the sense that people are more receptive and open, I think, here as well.
Also, you talk about those 3 films that you did in a short amount of time, because in a year and a half, that's like one film normally. And if you think about like an epic film, but a year and a half doing 3 projects like that, not only just, acting, but producing, which I don't think people realize or can appreciate what producers do.
Thank you.
but especially at a young age too. I mean, producing is not an easy thing to do. I mean, you're really seeing the project from the conception to distribution. And so, talk about that. Talk about, your multi roles in those films, and what, our audiences can expect from those films that you did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it really nicely that it is such a big role and it is a big responsibility, where you are taking something from inception to completion. So there were 3 different things. One of them was actually a film that was supposed to be shot here in the US, and obviously at that time it couldn't be done. So production moved to Australia. We did have American cast, American actors, as well as obviously provide opportunities to the Australian industry. That title in that film is called Madison and the Happiness Jar. It's a feel-good teen summer flick. That's how I like to at least describe it. And it's, if you've seen anything along the lines of Netflix, like The Kissing Booth, it's that type of young adult demographic audience that anyone can really watch and enjoy at any age as well. But it was beautiful to have the scenery of Australia that really made the film and made that background, that scenicness that you want to come across in such a heartfelt movie, where the storyline is feel good, So that was something that I didn't have a huge acting role. I wanted to take a back seat on that one. As much as you will see me in the film, it's it was definitely more producer strong film for me to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, films like that are always, I think we need that now more than ever, the feel good movies, especially after COVID. And, and the fact that you brought the production to Australia, I think that says a lot. You didn't want to shut it down, and you gave all these people the opportunity to still be in this movie. And so what an amazing, opportunity it was for them, I'm sure. But as a producer, how do you navigate getting together the casting and then also like location? Because I think both of those have a really important role in every film. So talk about your process of how you find, the casting director, and how do you find the location scout for your films like that?
So on Madison, we were working within restrictions at that time. Obviously, a lot of different things coming into play that you had to, go through those protocols. So we didn't have, honestly, a very extensive cast and crew, and we didn't have necessarily, that huge big budget that you would have potentially regularly. So a lot of the casting, honestly, I was in the room for at that time. So it was actually very hands-on, taking that on as well as other producer responsibilities. And a lot of time, when we're casting, it's not necessarily, we have an idea and vision for the character and we will stick to that. For some things you definitely have to, but when you have the option to be able to be open with your casting, that's when you're looking at anyone who can fit the role, any diversity, any ethnicity, and not basing it just on, kind of cookie cutter of, well, it was written this way, it has to be this way. We always love to look open and be very open with those casting choices.
That's very well said. I think, because a lot of times, especially nowadays, I think it's great to see some people that are in roles that traditionally weren't in the roles, maybe years ago, how it was cast. So I appreciate that as somebody who appreciates the industry and what you're doing to kind of help change that kind of narrative when we get to, certain casting, decisions. So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, being a young, producer and actress, how do you what would you say to somebody else that's maybe in your shoes, or maybe wants to get into the industry and maybe just got out of school and looking for work, and what kind of advice can you give that young person that's just getting started?
Yeah. Something I always love to say and that I definitely still stick by would be just kind of get out there and make your opportunities. I think a lot of people, tend to think that something will come, knocking at your door. And with this industry, it moves so quickly, and that's just not the case. So my best advice would be go out there and create your own content. You're in control of that content. And whether that's, comedy sketches, or whether that's drama or thriller, horror, whatever it is that you're passionate about and what your niche is and what you want to eventually work in or create genre wise, there's so much at our disposal that we can use. We have state-of-the-art phones these days that shoot 4K, and majority of people have. Partner up with a cinematographer who's maybe looking for, some more footage for their reel, or something to kind of give them that break as well. So, it's an industry where who definitely comes into play. And if you can create and collaborate as a team, then that's going to be, the best ultimate outcome for everyone. And I think that's the best thing, and the best advice I would have is go out there, create what you can, submit it to festivals, whatever it is that you want to do, and just take the reins, and take control.
When did you get interested in this? I mean, I know your mom's a writer and everything, but and director, but when did you get interested in actually doing like TV and film? Because I know you started out doing theater, I understand.
Yes.
So talk about that transition, I guess, and when you really started to get your love for TV and film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always loved it, if I'm going to be completely honest. It's always been a passion. It's never been something like forced. Just from little, always performing and like you said, theater. So that's where I started. And theater is such a different vibe, but it's a very community type feeling when you're creating. And I love that. That's one of the best things I love, is when you're on a set, or when you have like your, cast and crew that become your family working with them, is that camaraderie. So it's always been something I've loved, but it probably definitely didn't become more of a career path or career turn until later on in life, after around those teen years, I would say, is where it kind of took that turn.
Talk about when you're at the end of a project. Let's say you're at then like a movie and you're looking for distribution and so forth. I mean, this is one thing again that we talk a lot about at this, but networking and building partnerships with different people out there, and some of those people would be distributors, I would imagine. So talk about the importance of, I guess, building those partnerships with some distributors, because right now, we have the ability now to distribute on so many more platforms than they had the ability to even 20
Correct.
years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's more there's more competition, but at the same time, there's more of an ability, I guess, to put things on streaming platforms. So talk about that, and then does that partnership, from the past projects, kind of feed into future projects?
Yeah, it definitely does. It's important that you maintain those relationships. And like you said, it's definitely given more flexibility and more opportunity, but more competition. So that's very important when it comes to that time where you're looking at distribution. I mean, you really are looking at distribution from the get-go, to be completely honest. Yes, it comes into play once the production's finalized and cut, and the editing and the post-production is all done, and signed, sealed, delivered. But you're definitely looking at your distribution, I think, earlier on. At least I think you should be a lot of the time, to say, okay, well, this is the genre, we have X, Y, and Z actors, where will this be going? And we need to lock that in. There's, a few different ways you can look at it too, depending on what type of content, you're producing or creating, whether it's TV or film. TV obviously being episodic, you have your network, then you have your streaming. And then for film, very similar again, you have then your streaming platforms, or you have your independent kind of distribution distributors. So it's definitely something you should work out, I think, in the beginning and kind of have an idea of where you want to focus and if those contexts still come into play. And if not, you got to get out there,
Yeah.
and sell that film.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's one of the most difficult parts of it is, pitching your film and selling it to the right person. You did AfterBuzz TV, you did a lot of interviews and
Yes.
hosting. And I wanted to ask you who your favorite person was that you interviewed.
Oh gosh. I would probably have to say it would be a tie between Jessica Lowndes from 90210, and now she's gone on to do amazing things. She's
Sure.
like producing, creating all her own content now for Hallmark. I think she has a deal with them. She was just so sweet and it was like talking to a girlfriend. Didn't feel like work, even though work was being
Yeah.
done. And that's what you want. At the end of the day, you want to make someone feel comfortable with hearing and who you're talking to. And Nick Bateman.
Oh, okay. Definitely.
Yeah, he's a great guy. When I met him, like he wasn't, even a family guy. Now he's like a dad. So it's funny to see where everyone's kind of gone in that trajectory over the last several years. And, we still talk even on Instagram. We have like good conversation and I still want to cast him in something. So that's going to be the next thing, hopefully to get him on the next project.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that actually goes to, partnerships, and
Yes.
actually building those. So what is next for you? I mean, I know you've done so many things in the last few years, but I mean, what is next for Mikaela Phillips?
Yeah, it's been definitely a busy time. And currently on the slate is a production that we just finished filming at the tail end of last year called The Secret That Binds Us. It's like a new TV drama thriller. It has that homage to the kind of old school film of like the 80s Outsiders with that dark and grittiness.
Love it.
And then also like that modern kind of Pretty Little Liars twist of what we're used to seeing on like a Riverdale. So that commercial, new commerciality that people love to watch. So it's actually very unique. There's nothing like it right now. So I'm very excited to see and be able to announce later in the year where that will be going, where that will be streaming. So that's been keeping me very busy, Dave.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, I've been doing a lot of production work, pre-production work for a new film fantasy trilogy series. So that's been what's been going on.
Now, your mom wrote that, correct?
Yeah, Magic Wars. Yes. So
Yeah.
she wrote it, and currently we're in the process of having that adapted for screen with a few other producers and a great team.
For our listeners, your mom, Chris, is a best-selling writer. So I think that's, like I said, that goes a long way. So I think there's a lot of material there that you guys can work on as a team. And like I said, just kudos to both of you for the work that you do. It's just amazing work. And just like I said, at your age, to be doing what you're doing it's really, basically unheard of. And it's just, so it's really great that you're doing this and, ones to watch. You're one of the ones to watch in Australia, but I mean, it's here too. I mean, United States, the kind of stuff that you're doing, it's just really incredible work. One thing I want to ask you,
thank you.
of course, one thing I want to ask you is, first of all, what drives you? What's the one thing that drives you?
I think I have that innate drive and instinct already in me. I'm not sure if it's because of certain factors, growing up that obviously play a part, but, for the most part, mom had to do it on her own. I think I always saw, such a strong role model, such a strong parent. And I was around her all the time, working and seeing her actually on her feet and doing these different job roles, which kind of instilled that work ethic in me as well. So I would have to say, I have to pay homage to mom for the most part. That's definitely something that was instilled in me. But coming back to me, the individual always has the choice and has the free will. And it's definitely, I'm self-motivated. I definitely have those goals and, I want to achieve those goals. So that's what really drives me as well.
Yeah, well, you're definitely well on your way. And
thank you.
Whatever we can do to help promote your work, we're right there for you. And, one thing I like to end with on all my shows is, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to think about when they think of Mikaela Phillips?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Honestly, I think so one of the most important things is definitely to be happy. And I think I just want to be able to spread that positivity and that happiness with people wherever I go, whether that is through work or whether that is through personal relationships. At the end of the day, there's always so much going on. Everyone has their, lows and highs and their stresses. And if you can make someone's day, whether it's through, potentially a work-related way of casting or giving them a break, or whether it's just because you're just a really good friend and there for someone to talk to, I think that's definitely something I want people to be able to take away, is that they kind of don't have a bad thing to say and just are like, you know what, she was really great at this and really great in my life for this. And I think that honestly says a lot about someone.
Absolutely. Well, that's great and well said. Mikaela, where can people find your work? And I know a lot of it's on streaming platforms right now, but we want to make sure we drive people to go watch your work. So where could they find it?
You guys can find Madison the Happiness Jar streaming on Amazon Prime. You can find me on Instagram at Mikaela Phillips and on Twitter at Mickey, MIKI_Phillips. And you can find everything else on my social links and go from there.
All right, great. Well, Mikaela, I appreciate your time tonight, and thank you so much for being on the Stage Door Show. And like I said, the sky's the limit for you. And we can't wait to see what's next. And everybody go check her out on Amazon Prime and all the streaming platforms. Just an amazing actress, producer, and like I said, just a great career ahead of you. So thanks again, Mikaela, for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Dave, for having me. Much love to the Stage Door, and it was an absolute blast.